In this lab, we'll talk about identity and access management, IAM. With identity and access management, we can set up permissions for user or groups to access different resources. We'll start by creating two EC2 instances. One will represent a development environment and the other will present a production environment. We'll set up users and permissions and define who can access which environment. We'll start by creating two EC2 instances. We'll go to EC2 and we'll launch a new instance. We'll give the instance name. And also add some additional tags to it. The additional tag will be for the environment. So we'll set an env for environment tag, and the environment will be production or prod for short. Okay, next we'll select the Amazon Linux. We'll select the AMI. We'll select the instance at T2 micro, which is already selected, and we'll proceed without a key pair. When we'll finish this, we will launch the instance. We can have a look, and the instance is up. Let's repeat this and create a development instance. We'll repeat the same procedure, but this time we'll create a dev instance. Again, we'll add an additional tag. The environment will be dev. Amazon Linux will select the AMI T2 micro again without key pair, and we'll launch the instance. We'll refresh. Now we can select one of the instances, go to tags, and we'll see that we have the environment set to development, and if we'll select the other instance, we'll see that the tag of the environment is prod for production. That's it for now. Next, we will configure an IAM policy, an IAM user group, and an IAM user. For this, we'll go into IAM, and first we'll create an alias that will serve us in the sign-in URL. We'll create the alias. We'll now create a new policy. We'll click Policies, then Create Policy, and now we have two options. Option number one is to work with the visual editor. Option number two is to write a JSON file. In the workshop, you will find the JSON file for the policy that we need to create. So copy it from the workshop and paste it in this window and click Next. Before we continue, I want to dwell a little bit on the policies and what the statements are. So we have a few sections over here in the statement, and each statement has an effect. The effect will be either allow or deny. The action tells us what API calls are allowed on which service. So in this case, which API calls are allowed to run on the EC2 API. The resources that we are going to apply this policy, and the conditions for it. Now let's have a look a little bit on the breakdown. In this case, we have the effect is allowed, so we allow to have any API call on the EC2. The resource would be any EC2, and the conditions will be only if the string equals the resource tag. Inf should be dev. So the policy will allow any API call on any EC2 resource if the environment tag is from the development. If we go down, we'll see that we have another policy, and the effect will be deny. So we are going to deny. The actions will be to delete tag or create a tag on any resource. That means that we cannot change the tags on the EC2 or delete them. Let's continue. We'll give the policy a name, dev policy, and a description. We'll scroll down and create the policy. Next, we'll create a group. We'll name the group, and we will attach the policy we've created to the group. And click Create Group. We'll now create a user and add the user to the group. We'll give the user a name. This user should be able to access the management console. So we'll tick the box. We'll provide a password for the user. We don't want to recreate a password when we log in, so we'll take this one off and click Next. This user needs to be a part of the dev group, so we'll click the dev group, and this user will be auto-assigned to this group. And remember that this group has an assigned policy to it, the dev policy. We can review all the settings and create the user. We'll return to the list. And we'll press continue. We'll go back to the dashboard and copy the sign-in URL. We will paste the URL in a new window and sign in with the username and password. It was dev user. We now signed in with the dev user to the console. That's it for this stage. Okay, now it's time to put everything into a test. We want to see that the policy is working and all the permissions that we set are correct. In order to do this, we'll go back to IAM and we'll copy the sign-in URL. We'll open a new incognito browser window. Now this is not necessary, but I find it very useful to work this way as it will not log me out from the previous console that we were logged into. So we will paste URL. We'll add the username and the password. And now that we are logged in, We already can see that we have some permissions that are missing and we don't have access. But let's go to EC2. We'll go into the instances. Then we have the two instances from before. Let's try to see if we can stop, for example, the production instance. So I'll take the box and I'll try to stop the instance. I get an error saying that I do not have permissions. I'm not authorized to perform this operation. Let's try to see what about development instances. Can I stop them? We can now see that the instance is in stopping mode. Soon it will be stopped. We'll refresh again. And the instance is stopped. So before we continue to the next section, we need to have a good understanding of what is a role. Roles are temporary credentials that allow you to access only the permitted data or permitted services. Let's think about this analogy. When you're going to visit an office, usually you don't have access to all the office. You have access only to the certain rooms or to the certain floors in that access. In order to gain this access, you need to register at the reception and get a special key or a special card. With this card, you can open the doors that you are allowed to. The same with roles. When you assume a role, you can access the data or the service that you're allowed to. And just like in the office, when you finish your visit, you need to return the key card. The same with roles. Once you assume a role, you can use it for a specific amount of time, and then the permissions are revoked. Okay, so we'll start by creating a couple of buckets. In order to create a bucket, we need to go to S3, which is short for a simple storage service. Now we have two options. We can either click the create bucket, or we can go to the menu, have a look at the buckets, and click the create bucket from here. We'll make sure that we are in the correct region, and we'll give the bucket a unique name. Now that we have the name, we'll scroll down all the way and create the bucket. I'll go into the bucket and I'll upload a file. I'll add a file which I have already prepared and press upload. The file is successfully uploaded, and now we'll create another bucket. Again, we'll go to buckets and we will repeat the same process and create another bucket and upload the file to it. So again, we'll give the bucket a name, go all the way down, create a bucket, go into the bucket, and I'll upload same file. And we now have two buckets with the same file in them. I recommend you to make a note of the bucket names. Now we'll create the policies. We'll go back to IAM. And just like before, we'll click policies. We'll create a new policy. We'll use the JSON editor and we'll copy the policy that we have on the workshop. Note that you need to change the bucket name to the name of the bucket that you just created. We'll delete this name and add our name in the same in this line. So what is this policy doing? The policy allows to use the get and list on the S3 API for the S3 bucket that we created and specified. We'll now click Next and give the policy a name. We'll create the policy. We'll create the policy and attach it to a role. So we need to select role and we'll create a new role for an EC2 service. We'll attach to this role the policy we've created and we will give the role a name. Now that we have the policy and the role in place, let's go back to the EC2 instances. And we'll connect to the production instance. So we'll select it and connect to the instance using the EC2 instance connect. Once we're connected, we'll try to use the AWS CLI tool to list the S3 buckets that we have. Immediately, we get an error message saying that something is not configured right and it's not working. I'll close this window and now we'll attach to the production instance our new policy. So we'll select it, we'll go into security and we'll attach the role that contains the policy. We'll select the role and update the EC2 instance. Let's repeat this again. I'll select the instance, connect to the instance, and I'll try the same command again. This time we can see that we have access to the buckets. Now let's try to see if we have access to the content of the buckets. I can see the content of the bucket. Let's try with the second bucket. I'll copy the bucket name. This time, we do not have access to the bucket. The policy that is attached to the role allows access only to my S3 test Elon bucket as we configured. That's it for this section.